we've been going through the book, Don't Believe Everything You Think, doing one verse at a time, because it's a commentary on the 37 practices of bodhisattvas. And so each verse has a different practice. Can everybody hear me in the back? Good. Okay, so last time we did the chapter on bad friends. Yeah, and what happens when we hang around people who don't have good ethical conduct or who disparage our spiritual practice. And it made us really question what friendship is. And the verse we're doing this week is about relying on good friends, on spiritual friends. So here the meaning of a spiritual friend is a little bit different than the meaning of an ordinary friend. Okay? Because we all have lots of ordinary friends. And, you go out to dinner and a movie with them, and, maybe you go drinking and drugging, or, you do all sorts of, fun things, and you talk, and maybe you gossip about other people, or whatever, So we have lots of those kinds of friends. But what we don't have so much of is spiritual friends, people who we can really rely on for spiritual guidance. Yeah. And there's a line in the Pali Canon, in the sutras in the Buddha's speech, where the Buddha said, where Ananda is saying that spiritual friendship is half of the holy life, and the Buddha says, no, it's all of the holy life. And this is very often taken out of context in Western Dharma centers to mean friendship being with all the other people who come to the center. Okay? But that's not exactly it. How could you say being friends with all of the other people in the Dharma center is the whole of your spiritual life? Especially when some people come to the Dharma center aren't even Buddhist. Yeah? So what the Buddha, when that quote is actually, when you look in the whole context of what the Buddha is saying, he's talking there about a spiritual teacher. So he's using the term spiritual friend to mean a spiritual teacher, a spiritual mentor. Okay? So not necessarily somebody that we're palsy-walsy with, who we see on an equal level, but somebody who we have great respect for because we know they can instruct us and lead us and guide us. Okay? So that relationship is a very important one in our life, because according to who our teachers are, that's what we learn, and according to the role model our teacher sets for us, that's how we become. Okay? So everybody who's called a teacher or a spiritual friend or a spiritual mentor is not necessarily one. Okay? In the sense that there's no, most other fields have some kind of authorization process you need to go through to be authorized to do a certain profession. There really isn't one in Buddhism for becoming a spiritual friend, for becoming a spiritual mentor. It's more that somebody becomes a spiritual mentor, or should I say, plays the role of a spiritual mentor, when other people come and say, please teach me. So without people coming and saying, please teach me, that person doesn't become a mentor. Yeah? Although some people nowadays kind of set themselves up and say, oh, I'm going to be a spiritual mentor, and then advertise for people to come to them. But in the traditional way, people would see other people's qualities and say, oh, that person has some kind of special qualities. I want to go learn from them. And then they would go. Yeah. And so it's very important. It's not like, choosing your doctor and your dentist and your tax advisor and, those things are all very important. But choosing your spiritual mentors is more important, because who your spiritual mentor is will influence the kind of actions you do in this life, in other words, the karma you create, and that will influence where you get reborn, what your future experiences are, if you're able to, meet the conducive conditions to practice the path, whether you'll create the causes to realize the path. So, it's very, very important making wise decisions about spiritual mentors. So we can have more than one spiritual mentor. There's no problem with that. But we should really choose all of them carefully. And it's our decision to choose our spiritual mentors. In other words, somebody doesn't come along and say, "Oh, I'm going to be your teacher. And, you're exactly the kind of wonderful, spectacular student I've always been looking for." Because guess what happens then?
Turn around and go away.
Yeah, because otherwise our ego gets involved, doesn't it? Oh, here's this person with many titles, they sit on a big seat, and they're telling me that I'm the kind of disciple they've always been looking for? I must be pretty good, pretty important here. Yeah, so that actually becomes poisonous. Yeah. So it's really involved in looking at somebody's qualities carefully and making that decision. Okay? And I know for myself, in choosing and selecting my teachers, it was really important for me, and coincidentally it says in the scriptures, to choose somebody who has very ethical behavior on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, because for me, I look at it, you can say all sorts of highfalutin sounding things, but if your life is a mess, and you're angry, and you're bossy, and you just create disharmony, and you're embezzling money and sleeping around or getting drunk or doping, it's like, is that a good example of somebody I want to become like? Not even my parents would tell me to take that as a role model. Yeah? And so, somebody with very good ethical conduct, who I can emulate, who serves as a role model for me, because we become like the people we hang around. And similarly, I kind of looked at the disciples of those people. And, the disciples aren't always perfect. That's why they're disciples, because we aren't perfect. But, you look at them and like, how are they behaving? What are they practicing? Because if we hang out with a group of people, we're going to start doing what those people do. Yeah? So it's important to look at their day-to-day behavior and see just how things are carried on. So I think ethical conduct's quite important. And then, of course, somebody who has meditative experience, somebody who has studied a lot, who knows the scriptures. Otherwise, people can just come along and say, because you have people who have had some kind of unusual experience in meditation, and then they think that they've realized emptiness, or they have some high attainment, and then they say that to other people, and other people follow them, but they themselves haven't studied, they don't know what the path is and how to practice, and they haven't even checked with their teacher to see if their experience in meditation was something accurate or not. Yeah, because you can have all sorts of experiences when you're meditating and see all sorts of things. But it doesn't mean that you're having some mystical experience or Dharma realization. Yeah. I mean, this is, I think, part of the problem is people think, that becoming a spiritual person means that you're just like, and you have some kind of special thing, and then you speak all these words that nobody understands. And when you do pujas, the more you mumble in a language that nobody understands in Tibetan or Sanskrit or Pali, and you ring a bell and play a drum, and the more hats you have and the higher your seat, and people get so enamored with these external things, but that they're just external things. Yeah? Any of us can do external things, can't we? Yeah? I mean, can't we? So, and then everybody goes, oh, wow, look at her. She's communing with the Buddha. She has some incredible experience. I'm just doing make-believe garbage. So it's and especially in the West where you have these New Age magazines, where everybody advertises, come see this one special teacher, your first and only chance, special price to receive their initiation, $99.99 for you. And many people go. And some people, it's quite interesting, if they charge a lot of money, people think it must be very holy and very worthwhile. If you're like us and you do everything completely free and let people give what they want, then people think, oh, it's not worth anything. This is how it's done in the West. In the East, people know that teachings are given freely. Okay? So it's quite interesting. And I've been to some countries, really, where the more teachers mumble in a language and ring bells and have brocade all around them, then the more people just think, oh, they must be a spectacular teacher. And that has nothing to do with anything. Yeah, it's really looking at a person's qualities. And for me, the proof of the pudding is how a person lives their life. I don't have the ability to tell anybody else's meditative state or meditative realization, but I can look at how they live their life. And I can look and see, have they studied? Who have they studied with? Have they studied with really excellent teachers? Or have they, just done a little bit of study here and there with the local Charlatananda? Have they done retreats? To really check and see and not be attracted by glitter and charisma. But really see the qualities. Yeah. Is the person compassionate? Because we definitely want a compassionate teacher, because sometimes we act pretty obnoxiously. Sorry to admit it. Yeah? But we get angry, we're rebellious, we don't like authority. So we really need a teacher who is quite compassionate and who's really looking out for our benefit, not for their own reputation and their own bank account. Okay? Yeah? But once you've found a teacher that you really trust and that you value and respect, it becomes a wonderful thing in your meditation practice, because your connection with that person or those people supports your entire practice. Yeah, because you're getting Dharma teachings, you're getting instructions. Depending upon how close you are to your teacher may correct you when you're going astray. If you're not very close, the teacher won't correct you because probably you'll run away. But if you are close and your teacher thinks you can handle it, they will, tell you frankly when you're going in the wrong direction. And so you have that feeling of connection with somebody who is representing all of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to you, who's connecting you to the teachings, who's connecting you to the lineage of practitioners, who's showing you how to actualize that path. And you feel the connection with that person or those spiritual mentors as, kind of some supportive energy in your life. Yeah. And so when you're confused, when you need to figure out what to do, then you think of them and you think, okay, what would my teacher tell me to do now? I've heard many teachings. I have this problem. I'm really angry at my neighbor. Yeah, my teacher's given many teachings. What would they tell me to practice in this situation? Yeah. Well, if we have any smarts, we'll think, oh, well, my teacher taught me chapter 6 of Shantideva's text on practicing patience and fortitude, and, or they taught me, like His Holiness's book, Healing Anger, or Working with Anger, or, any of these books. Oh, my teachers taught me these things. This is what I need to practice. And then you know what you need to do, and you go about doing it. And it's so helpful in your life. Yeah, so helpful. And you feel kind of, when you've been around for a while and you can do this, then you really feel the support. Yeah? But of course you have to be around for a while. Yeah? Because making that connection isn't just, well, you make the connection and then immediately, you have all the benefits from it. It's something that develops over time. So when you have a close connection with the teacher, then you attend teachings over time. Yeah, you make offerings to that teacher, of material things, but also of service. When you offer service to your teacher and help with their various projects, you learn a whole lot. Because they get you going, doing all sorts of virtuous things. My teacher sent us out, throughout the world, working in different Dharma centers, teaching and running centers, and, and doing all sorts of stuff that made us learn from the experience. Yeah. So, and as you have experiences, as you grow, as you study, as you practice, then that connection becomes deeper and deeper. Yeah, and it really is a support in your life. You don't feel like you're kind of out there in the middle of nowhere anymore, because you know that your teacher's there, and your teacher is connecting you to the Buddha, to the Dharma, and to the Sangha. And even if your teacher passes away, you still feel connected. Yeah? You still feel very connected. I remember when I was living in Dharamsala in 1881, one of my teachers, Geshe Nawan Darge, his teacher, Trichang Rinpoche, passed away. And the whole community, because it was mourning, because Trichang Rinpoche was quite a well-respected master. But my teacher, Geshe Nawan Darge, even though Trichang Rinpoche died that day, he held class that day. And he was like radiant teaching the Dharma. And I'm going, oh my goodness, this must be very painful for him having his teacher pass away. But I realized in watching how he did that, is like he had such a close connection with his teacher that his teacher's whole purpose was to share the Dharma and encourage people on the path. So what was Geshe-la doing that day? Sharing the teaching, spreading the Dharma, encouraging people on the path. Doing exactly what his teacher did and what his teacher had wanted him to do. And that really struck me, like probably in spite of his own grief. What was he doing? Exactly, what his teacher would have wanted. And he was so joyful doing it. Yeah. And then later that same day, I went somewhere else, and I was with another one of my teachers, and there we were doing puja, meditation ceremonies, and my teacher was just crying during the whole ceremony, and I thought, wow, this is really showing how tight that connection was. Yeah. Very, very tight. How he felt the kindness of his teacher so much. Yeah, because I think he wasn't crying so much because his teacher died and out of a sense of personal loss, but because just out of the wonder and amazement that, my goodness, I connected with somebody like that, and look at what that person taught me, and look how kind that person has been, and look at what I've been able to do because I've spent the time studying with that person. Yeah. So it was quite interesting for me watching two of my teachers respond very differently, but see that both of their responses were very much in accord with the Dharma, and both of their responses were huge teachings for me. Something that I could never have learned in a formal teaching, but only by being there and watching and experiencing. Yeah. So it's, it's something quite important. But let me do the verse, okay? I should actually get to the verse. And I must say that this topic of relying on a spiritual friend, it's one that I am usually quite cautious in talking about in the West, because many people really easily misunderstand it, and people will hear the stories of the great masters, and then they think, I've got to go and get myself a guru. I've got to go get myself a new car. But you don't just go get yourself a guru and, go guru shopping. You have to cultivate your own qualities and check things out and see who speaks to your heart and what practice speaks to your heart, and so on. Okay? So the verse in the Tibetan poem says, when you rely on them, your faults come to an end, and your good qualities grow like the waxing moon. Cherish spiritual teachers even more than your own body. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Okay, so when you rely on them, your faults come to an end. Why is that? Yeah. Well, this person is helping you, is teaching you what to practice on the path and what to abandon. What is wholesome or virtuous, what is unwholesome and non-virtuous. Okay? So when you learn that, when you practice it, then your faults come to an end, because you stop acting like a jerk. Yeah, your teacher gives you precepts, either the 5 lay precepts, let's say, to abandon killing, stealing, unwise and unkind sexual behavior, lying, and taking intoxicants. So, your teacher gives you those precepts. If you keep those precepts, a lot of your faults are going to come to an end. Because what do we have, what creates so much disharmony and so many problems in our life is when we do those 5. So if we take the precepts and we stop doing them, whew, we have fewer problems because we have fewer faults. Yeah, and then our teacher teaches us how to work with our mind, what to do with our hot temper. Yeah, what to do with the fact that sometimes some of us have a cold temper. We completely withdraw and shut down when we're angry. So our teachers teach us how to deal with that. Yeah, so we start to subdue our own anger. That's a fault coming to an end. We stop being so greedy. We stop being as selfish. Yeah. Our jealousy decreases. Our arrogance decreases. Yeah, our faults come to an end. So, by practicing the teachings, keeping the precepts, then, we really benefit. And then the second line says, and your good qualities grow like the waxing moon. So in the same way, when we have teachings, when we observe, learn by observing, then just like the waxing moon grows, slowly, our good qualities also increase like the waxing moon. And we become able to do things that we never thought we could. We may have had like an incredibly violent temper, and after years of practice, we realize, I don't explode and yell and scream and throw things and go ballistic anymore. Wow. And your family and your friends go, we like Buddhism, please go to teachings, You're so much nicer when you practice. Yeah. And, things we didn't think we would be able to do. Subdue a lot of self-centeredness and really cherish others. And really cherish others from our heart so that doing things for others doesn't, always become this kind of, well, I got to nudge myself along, I don't know about you, but, for me, I really value cherishing others more than self. But boy, to be kind, I have to really talk myself into it and, give myself a whole pep talk and, come on, children, just a little bit. You can give a little bit and have to do this whole kind of thing. But then to realize, if you really continue practicing, then through the force of habit, through the force of putting what your teachers taught you into practice, then pretty soon it becomes an automatic, spontaneous thing. And it's not so difficult to be kind and to be generous. I remember when I lived in Dharamsala, India, and I would walk to the bazaar to get my vegetables. There were the local beggars, our community had some beggars that just lived there, and you got to know them. And they sat on a specific part of the road going down to the bazaar. It took me maybe 20 minutes to walk to the bazaar. And in those days, a cup of tea was like 25 pesos, so maybe 1 penny in U.S. money. That was before inflation. But still 1 penny, And I was really poor when I lived in India. But I definitely had more money than these beggars did. But when I would walk past them, it was so difficult for me to give them, even that 1 penny for a cup of tea, because my mind was going, well, but there's 5 beggars, and you have to give each of them a cup of tea, and then that's a nickel. And if I give it away, I won't have it. Yeah, and it's really important to me to hang on to my money because, I'm really poor living here in India. And I would have to do something with that mind to give myself a whole pep talk, because I'd go to teachings in the morning, and Geshe Nawandarge would talk about a bodhisattva's generosity of giving their body, and I'd go, wow, I want to become like that. Wow, imagine being able to give your body with no pain, with no regret, with nothing, just having that much detachment you can give your body. And then I'd see the beggars, and I'd go, well, yeah, you admire the bodhisattvas giving your body, and you can't even give a nickel. It's like children, come on, open your purse, pull out 25 paisa, give them each a penny, come on. I would have to push myself to do it. Yeah? So, the reason I'm telling you this is that, we all have different things that are difficult for us on the path. But if we practice and if we follow our teacher's instructions, then, some of those things that used to be really difficult for us to do then become easy. Yeah, I can give nickels now. Yeah, I can even give dimes and dollars sometimes, So, yeah. So we surprise ourselves when we practice and become able to do things. So that's why it says, when you rely on them, your faults come to an end, and your good qualities grow like the waxing moon. Okay? So it says, when you rely on them, that's the thing. We have to rely on our spiritual teacher. Okay, so what does that mean? It means we have to trust them. It means we have to value them. Yeah, we have to respect them. We have to see their kindness. We have to follow their teachings. If we don't follow the teachings, if we don't attend teachings, if we listen to the teachings and then think, well, they don't know what they're talking about, or we listen to teachings and think, oh, what they're saying is for somebody else, it's not for me, then we're not relying on our spiritual mentors, and we won't get those results of our bad qualities decreasing and our good qualities increasing. Okay? So it's really important that we rely on our spiritual mentors. Mm-hmm. Okay? And then the third line and fourth line of the verse says, cherish spiritual teachers even more than your own body. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Now you're going to go, cherish my spiritual teacher, yes, okay. More than my own body? I don't know about that. My body's been with me since I've been born. My body is me. It's mine. If I don't have this body, I won't be alive. I won't be me. I've got to hang on to this body for all eternity. So I'm not going to cherish anybody else more than my own body. Right? Isn't that the way our mind thinks? Yeah. I don't want to even offer a drop to the mosquitoes. Yeah. So cherish spiritual teachers more than your own body. This doesn't mean that we all have to go down and, lay our body down for the sake of our teacher's life. But what it does is it gets us thinking, why would Tongme Zampo, the author of this text, why would he say that? My body is the most precious thing that I have. Why would he say, cherish spiritual teachers more than the most precious thing I have? Because that's essentially tantamount to saying spiritual teachers are the most precious thing I have, not my body. Yeah? Is that what he's saying? Is that what he's really meaning? Yeah, Well, yes, that's what he's meaning. Because if we really take the Dharma to heart when we're very serious in our practice, if we really want to attain full enlightenment, we realize that having that a spiritual mentor is totally indispensable. Totally indispensable. And that the kindness of our teacher is beyond belief. Like I was saying, who we choose as a teacher is going to influence many, many, many lives. Yeah? So that person, for teaching us the Dharma and enabling us to create the causes for a good life, to create the causes for liberation, to create the causes for full awakening, that person is giving us something that nobody else in the whole wide world can give us. Yeah? Our parents, as much as they love us, can't show us the path to enlightenment. Our husbands and wives, as much as we love them. Our kids, as much as we love them. Our best friends, as much as we care about them. Nobody else in our life can show us the path. Yeah? And that person who shows us the path is showing us the most valuable thing to learn in life. Because everything else we do, at the end of the day, we leave behind. We might have a lot of fun with our friends and relatives and our relations. We might have great discussions with them, do many interesting things with them. But at the end of the day, they stay here and our consciousness goes on alone. And have those people taught us how to create the causes for happiness in the future life, how to attain liberation and enlightenment. Yeah? Have those people helped us differentiate what to practice and what to abandon. They may have loved us tremendously, but they don't have the capability to do that. That's only something our spiritual mentors can do. And so, when you think of the long-term perspective, not just of this lifetime, then you really see the importance of a spiritual mentor and why cherishing that person is more important than cherishing your own body. Because at the end of the day, we leave this body behind. Don't we? Yeah, we can't take this body with us. Our consciousness separates, this body gets recycled. Yeah? Doesn't matter how many nice clothes we have, how big of a bank account we have, how many friends, how long our obituary is with the titles of all the magnificent things we've done in our life. None of that comes with us. But what our spiritual teacher has taught us and how we have put that into practice, that's created the causes for what we're going to be in the future. And so that person is, the most precious thing in our lives. It takes us a long time to understand this. That's why I said this is one of the more difficult meditations to do, and why it's so easily misunderstood in the West. But it's when you really think about it over time, then it makes some sense. Yeah? Okay. Should I read some stories? In the book, yeah. Yes.
We all have had instances where rich and famous people who we've used as role models have disappointed us.
Yep.
Sports figures. And I think the problem there is we probably shouldn't have used them as role models to begin with.
Yep.
Set the bar too high. But how do we respond when someone that we have selected as our spiritual teacher disappoints us, and we find out that their behavior isn't as ethical as we thought it was? Namely, some of the well-known Zen masters that, of late turned out to be less than ethical and have, gone down in flames.
Mm-hmm.
How do we respond to that?
Okay, so how do we respond? So, first of all, it's like I said at the beginning, whoever has the name teacher doesn't have to be your teacher. So, you don't have those expectations for everybody. Okay? Second of all, you have to discriminate, is this person's action, are they actually unethical, or are they just something that I don't like? Okay, so, are they sleeping around? Are they embezzling money? Those are definitely unethical actions. Somebody, doing something like telling you that you need to meditate more, or spend more time on your practice and less time on your hobbies, but you don't want to hear that. You want advice that corresponds to your ego, but your teacher's telling you something that your ego doesn't like. That's not unethical. That's just, I don't want to do it because I have a lot of attachment or I have anger. So you really have to discriminate those situations. They're quite different. Yeah. Then, okay, the teacher's doing something unethical. Then the best way to regard that, okay, now, if that person is not your teacher, for me, I'm going to regard it one way. If that person would be my teacher, I would regard it in another way. Okay? If that person's not my teacher, I have the more standard view of, like I said, everybody who has the name teacher isn't necessarily a teacher. And why expect them to be completely 100% perfect? I don't have that expectation. Yeah. If somebody is my teacher, I also remind myself I shouldn't expect them to be 100% perfect, because what is my idea of perfect? Yeah. Okay. My idea is perfect is they do what I want them to do. But here's an thing where they're actually doing something unethical. Okay? So there's a few ways to look at it. One is, this person, when I watch this person do this, it's like this is showing me what will happen to me if I act that way. Yeah? By doing this person is showing me how I betray other people's trust, how I create commotion, how I do whatever. Yeah? And so this is an example for me of how not to behave. So it's a teaching in a way. I might also say, this has kind of crossed a line for me, and it's difficult for me to follow somebody who has done this kind of thing. So then I respect them for everything they've taught me and for everything I've learned from them. I really respect that. But I'm going to make relationships with other teachers now, because I need role models that don't do this particular kind of behavior. And then I form other relationships. Yeah. So this is one of the reasons why I really encourage people to check out the qualities of a teacher first before taking that person as your own spiritual mentor. They say that Atisha checked out the qualities of one of his precious teachers, Dipankara, Serlingpa, for 12 years. He hung around and checked out Serlingpa's qualities before he decided to take him as a teacher. We kind of go in, sign up, oh wow, looks good, he's my teacher. That's not so smart on our part. Okay? Does that answer your question okay? Yeah? Yeah, His Holiness says in cases, that are quite serious like that you don't just throw the person out the window, like, oh, you're worthless and everything you taught me is worthless, because if we do that, we're actually harming ourselves. It's like, that person taught me a lot. They got me going. And I appreciate that, and I respect that, and I'm going to continue to do those practices because I can see that they're general Buddhist practices that all my other teachers teach. Yeah, so I'm not going to let go of the practice, but it's time for me to create some space with that teacher and rely more on my other teachers.
Should we separate the teachings from the teacher?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Yeah, quite definitely. But see, again, that's why before we select teachers, we look, and His Holiness says, you go and you see if what this person is teaching corresponds with the general Buddhist presentation or not. And if it does, then you know that teaching's reliable, and you can practice it. If they're teaching some weird thing, then leave it. Yeah? This was one of the things that really struck me, because when I got involved in Buddhism, I didn't know anything about anything. I really didn't, And I remember going to Dharamsala. I had received some teachings in America, and then I went to Nepal, and I went to India. And I was so impressed. Wow, all these teachers say the same thing. Wow, Because otherwise, I grew up in California. Back in California, every teacher you go to, they all have their own thing. Yeah, but wow, they all say the same thing. And they all quote the same lineage masters. And they rely on the same texts. And, wow, there's something here that's, tried and true. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, a lot of it too, I think really depends on karma. We're attracted to teachers because of, actions and ways of thinking that we've had in previous lives. And I know there was a certain period of time in the early 90s where there were a lot of scandals. And I remember talking with a dear Dharma friend of mine, and he and I were going, wow, we hit the jackpot. He and I have many of the same teachers, and we said, our teachers are like completely, the real McCoy, and were we ever lucky? Because here are all these other people, and who knows what's going on. So that actually made me really appreciate my teachers even more, Other questions? Comments? Anything? It's 1 minute too. Should I read one of the stories of the book? Okay. Let's see, what was this one here? Okay. Should I read your story? Okay. So one of the stories, because all the stories came from, they're true stories that people told. So here's her story. It's called Following Charlatananda. Putting your trust and faith in a qualified spiritual teacher is one of the fundamental teachings of the Buddha. His Holiness the Dalai Lama has spoken of this many times, urging everyone to take time to investigate anyone they are considering as a spiritual mentor. He encourages us to observe and to see if they teach the pure Dharma and if they behave as they teach others to behave. It is also helpful to observe their students to see if they are trying to live ethically and have kind hearts. Only then can we decide to take a certain person as our spiritual guide. Before I met the Dharma, I had not heard this wise advice. Thus I experienced many afflictive states of mind by following someone who was, to put it mildly, a shyster. Back in 1988, I was part of a therapy group that met weekly with a man who was quite talented in facilitating people's inner journeys. He introduced the group to a supposed psychologist who said that who he said was quite amazing and encouraged all of us to meet him. From what he said, this psychologist apparently had supernatural powers. When he blew on people's heads, their entire body would fill with light. He also had the ability to make people, sometimes entire groups of people, disappear. We were all quite curious about him. Over a period of 6 months, our group and our friends, about 30 of us altogether, went to see this psychologist. He offered individuals time on the couch where he would blow on the top of our head, and indeed our whole body filled with light. He was charismatic and handsome, almost exotic looking, with a lovely face and a charming accent. Although married, he had an unusual interest in the young women in the group and would invite us to his hotel room where one of us would entertain him. The cost of his 20-minute head-blowing sessions was $100. This was back in 1988. And within 3 months, I had spent hundreds of dollars getting my fix of light. Those who questioned his behavior or his fee were guilt-tripped and shamed in front of the group. The pressure to show up each week and to just hang around his fancy apartment until your turn got very intense. Along with this came a lot of jealousy over who would be his favorite that day. Afterwards, we would take him out to dinner at expensive restaurants, drinking for hours and spending money many of us did not have. We were like addicts, all out for sense pleasure deluxe. Through a series of misadventures, his deceptive lies were revealed. We finally came out of our fog and stopped attending the sessions. This charlatan had made thousands of dollars off a group of gullible, naive people who just wanted to feel special with somebody who had a few magical tricks up his sleeve. When I finally came to my senses, my savings were gone. I was $1,200 in debt and barely employed. It took me years to get over the deception of this shyster and to make peace with my own blindness. Later, when I met a Dharma teacher, I spent a lot of time examining her behavior and her life before deciding to initiate a teacher-student relationship. I checked out the qualities of the teachings and observed if they helped me. Her students were kind and sincere, which gave me the confidence that if I followed her guidance, I would become like them. Sometimes I still struggle with doubt and trust issues, which are leftovers from that wild, foolish, and painful experience. However, with a lot of compassion and wisdom, my teacher is guiding me through it and out the other side, for which I am very grateful. For more details, I remember when she told us the whole long story, we were like, oh my God. Yeah.